We do have on recording. And let's get started. So this is the Olympic Peninsula Audubon Society virtual field trip to the Elwha River Mouth. And thank all of you for participating. Our programs are top locations and birds by season. It is recorded and distributed to registered attendees by email, shared on the Opus website and other media, and please feel free to take screenshots of any of the slides. That is also permitted. The audience is muted to allow for clear sound, and please use the chat function. There is time for questions reserved at several points throughout the program. So we want to hear if you have questions or comments. If you've been to these locations, we also value your input into what makes a good visit to the Elwha River Mouth. And I'd like to introduce two folks, if they can just say hi. They're going to be helping monitor the chat and the questions. The first is Jean Seisner, who is our Opus field trip co-chair. Jean, do you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and welcome. You're in for a good treat because Judy really knows this area very well, and it's an excellent place to bird. So enjoy.
Thanks, Jean. And Mary Porter Solberg, would you like to say hi?
Sure. Hi, everybody. And I agree with Jean. It's going to be great. So sit back and enjoy.
And when you send your chat comments or questions, those are the folks who are going to be picking up on them and then relaying them along to the rest of us, just so we can maximize sound quality. And as I mentioned, as we were getting started, if you could turn off your video, it also helps to preserve bandwidth because there were a large number of registrants. And in order to have the best picture quality and the best sound, you'll still be able to see the slides and hear us, but if you turn off your video, it will help with the Zoom bandwidth too. So let's get started. To get to the Elwha River Mouth, we're on the north shore of the Olympic Peninsula here, and Port Angeles is right over here, and this is Highway 101, which is the pretty much only north-south, east-west main highway on the North Olympic Peninsula. So as you're coming out of Port Angeles, coming down Highway 101, keep your eyes out for the Strait of Juan de Fuca Highway, and you're going to come down it and fairly quickly make a right turn and go over to the mouth of the Elwha here. So that's where we're going to be spending our time today. You can also note, though, that there's another spot over here, Freshwater Bay Park. So you'll be able to view right across to another area that's also this whole beach area and open strait is wonderful for birding. So here's a satellite picture of where we're going to be going. And I'll go over directions in detail on the next slide, but coming down Place Road, we're going to be coming up to the Elwha Beach access here, parking, and there's a whole line of public parking that's right here. There's also a porta potty, and then walking down the trail. The trail passes a pond, which is a beaver pond, and here is the beaver hutch. And so occasionally you can see their slides. Occasionally you can see the beavers, but you can also walk into the riparian area over here a little bit. And then we'll be walking down this trail out to the beach. This is where the gulls tend to congregate. And then you can also look out over the strait. So there are a number of different habitats here, which make it such a great spot for birding. So driving, after you leave Port Angeles on Highway 101, go west, and you'll see Highway 112 coming up pretty quickly as soon as you get out of the limits of Port Angeles. Take Highway 112 towards Joyce, make a right, there's a big sign, and it's the Juan de Fuca Scenic Highway. Go 2.2 miles and you'll see the sign for Place Road on your right. Make a right on Place Road, and that's going to take you pretty much directly to the Elwha River mouth. After you've gone 1.8 miles on Place Road and you're going north, you come to the kind of a T intersection. You can't go straight anymore, that's the water. Place Road itself continues to the left. You don't want to make a left at the T. You want to make a right onto Elwha Dike Road. And there's also a sign to help you out, Elwha River access. This is a very small gravel road, and you just go about 10 car lengths and you'll see the parking area on your right. The sign, and well, here's the gate. This is the trail we're going to be going down. Don't park right in front of the gate, but there's probably about 10 or 15 parking spots right over here against the bushes on the right, and you'll see them pretty clearly. There's often other people parked here. This is a popular spot to walk. Sometimes surfers are here, so there'll probably be other people in the area. There's a very nice sign explaining that this is Elwha River Estuary and West Elwha Beach. It is maintained by a number of community groups, including the Lower Elwha tribe. They ask, keep pets on a leash, dispose of your trash, no fires, no fireworks, no camping, and note that this is a Great Washington State birding trail spot, which we'll talk about in more detail. After you walk around the little yellow gate here, and it's easy to walk around it, you don't have to climb through or anything, there's a sign, private property. Again, keep your dog on a leash. Don't go at dark, no fires, no motor vehicles, no firearms or fireworks. And again, please clean up after your dog. This is a popular place to take dogs, and it will remain open to all of us if we take care of it and keep it tidy. So let me talk for a minute about the Great Washington State Birding Trail. The Elwha River Mouth is number 27 on the birding trail, and you can obtain this Olympic loop from washington.audubon.org under birds, Great Washington State Birding Trail. There are 7 different loops in the state of Washington with 375 hotspots. If you don't want to get the paper version, I kind of like the paper version, it's beautiful. You can open it all up and see, the whole Olympic Peninsula and all the spots. You can also get an app for your phone, which is a little more convenient if you're carrying it and you're on the road. So here's what the signs look like for the Great Washington State Birding Trail Olympic Loop spots. And we are stopping at quite a few of them as we do these programs. Once a month or so, we are on our 3rd program. So we've done Schmuck Road, Dungeness Landing, Three Crabs, and other spots on the Great Washington State Birding Trail as well. And those are recorded, and they're on the Olympic Peninsula Audubon Society website under recorded virtual field trips, under events, if you wanted to hear the other programs. So what does the Washington Birding Trail say about this location? Well, fall, winter, it is the place for roosting Thayer's gulls. And there's also an assortment of other gulls that you can look through as you look out at the large number of gulls who come here in the winter. Herring, western, California, ring-billed, glaucous wing, and glaucous gulls. And we'll be going through each of these gulls one by one as we go through the program. It's also a good place for loons, grebes, goldeneyes, harlequin ducks, mergansers, scoters, scaup, and the little beaver pond I pointed out is freshwater, and there are pied-billed grebes, lesser scaup, gadwalls, hoodie mergansers, assorted other warblers, chickadees, and other birds to see there as well. And we'll be covering each of these as we go through the different habitats at the river mouth. So I'm going to stop here and ask, are there any questions about how to get there or directions before we move on to the next section, which is how eBird can help to plan a trip?
No questions yet, Judy.
Any comments or thoughts before we move on? Okay, great. I hope everyone can find this location using the directions, because it's a great place. Although the directions are not very readily available on how to get there. So we'll move on. So how does eBird help us? eBird will help us understand which birds might be present in this location at particular times of year. So it's useful to plan a trip to see what you might be able to see, what's there, what's been seen lately. And if you see a bird you're not sure about, eBird, I found, can help, because you look up, well, that bird's not here now, so it's probably this bird. And you can also go to eBird, look up pictures of birds, play recordings of bird sounds. So there are a lot of resources to help a birder who is not familiar with the birds in our area figure out what's happening. So let me walk you through on how to use eBird to plan for this trip. So starting out, when you establish an account, you go to the eBird basic site here. Get my pointer up here. And it brings you to the main page, and you want to go to Explore Regions here and type in Clallam, and up will come Clallam, Washington, and click on it. And eBird, I had to change my slides because eBird is updating, and just recently it takes you to a different slide now. So eBird is in the midst of modernizing and changing, and so I had to do some fancy footwork today to update my slides, but I think I managed to catch it all. Takes you to Clallam, and now you go over here to hotspots. And as you can see, there are 184 hotspots in Clallam County, and this is what we're going to be clicking on to get to the next page. So here are the hotspots. We have already done Three Crabs. We're going to be doing Edda's Hook next month. And here's Elwha River Mouth. That's our subject today. We've done Holland, Port Williams, and Schmuck Roads. We've done John Wayne Marina. So we're going through the hotspots. Nia Bay at this time, as most of you might know, is closed because of the pandemic. So I wouldn't recommend, although fall's a great time to go out there. The reservation currently is not open to any visitors. So if we go to number 9, Elwha River Mouth, we can see this is a pretty good Clallam County hotspot with 206 species. And if we click on the name Elwha River Mouth, it takes us to an overview. And we can see what's been seen recently, what are high counts. So that helps. Someone was here yesterday, and so I looked over before the program, oh, what did they see when they were here? And we'll be talking about that later. But a useful place to go is to bar charts. Having trouble with my pointer. It's down here, excuse me, there we go, bar charts. Okay, over on the left. So if you click on bar charts, you're in Elwha River Mouth, and here is an example of what's going to pop up. So bar charts work by showing you birds between January, going along the calendar through December. And each of the species is listed in taxonomic order. So for example, we would expect to see harlequin ducks all year long in this location. They're here, big bars, through the winter, through the summer, they're just around. Lots of harlequin ducks. Also common mergansers. Throughout the year, they seem to pretty much be around, big, thick green bars. But other birds that we might be interested in Some of the other dabbling ducks, not really here much during the summer. They go somewhere else to breed and come during the winter. So if you're going to be looking for, say, a greater scaup, probably you're going to start to see them at the end of October. Similarly with our diving ducks, if you're looking for bufflehead or long-tailed duck, the end of well, a little bit earlier for bufflehead, but end of October is good for long-tailed ducks. So depending what birds you want to see and when you want to visit, this tool is very helpful to have you plan. There's also another tab you can use, which is to print a printable checklist. If you want to print a checklist and carry it with you while you're at the site, that can be helpful. The internet access can be a little dicey way up on the north side of the Olympic Peninsula. Occasionally, phones will tell you that you're in Canada, which is right across the strait. So don't necessarily depend on being able to have active internet access at all the points that I'm showing you here. Better to be prepared and bring a list with you of things that you're hoping to see. There's also a good website link, olympicpeninsulaaudubon.org, which is Opus's website, which has here a spot for the Elwha River Mouth, and again, where to find birds, map, and assistance. So this is also a good, more local resource on how to look for birds on the Olympic Peninsula. We're going to get to birds soon. Let me stop and ask, are there any questions about using eBird and planning your trip?
Nothing yet?
Anybody want to put in chat any questions or comments? Okay, let's move to the birds. So remember, we parked here, where we got this little good camera spot. Somewhere along here, we parked our car and went through the little fence, which is right about here. There's a porta potty right here. If you want, you can walk into the forest a bit. But then the area where I usually go is down this trail. And the first thing you'll see here is the beaver pond on your left, which is fresh water. So let's explore who we might see. Oh, and on your right here are willows and other trees that come out and kind of cover the walk. It's a very pretty walk. So you're kind of in the forest next to the pond. Nice location. And so here's some mallards, a young mallard and adult mallards who greeted me sitting on a log in the beaver pond. And these are pictures I took about 2 weeks ago. And going down, this is the trail that I mentioned that you walk down to get to the beach with the bushes and shrubs around. And this is a particular, right here, about a third of the way down the trail, you're going to see an apple tree, which is usually just loaded with apples. Apples are on the ground, and the birds sit up here and swoop down and munch on the apples. So this is a really good spot for birds on the trail. I've seen a lovely white-throated sparrow here who really enjoys the apples. So make sure you check out the apple tree as you're walking down the trail. And then in these bushes and up on some snags, there can be all kinds of birds. There's no cars around here. The river is on the other side here. The pond is on the other side there. The beach is up there. So you've just got a very good birdie location as you walk down the trail. As you continue walking down the beaver pond, you'll start to see logs in the pond. This is a very good spot to see birds sitting on the logs or birds swimming in the water here. So take your time as you move down the beaver pond. I recently, in spring migration, saw a very nice cinnamon teal who was tucked in there. This on the bottom, the brown bird, is a lesser scaup and female. She's brown. And as you can see, her head peaks in the back here, like a little bump on the back of her head. It's highest in the back. And tends to be a little corner there. And from her bill to her face, it's sort of a smooth arc. Smooth here and really peaks in the back. Lesser scop. She is also in the freshwater pond, and lesser scop are somewhat more frequent in freshwater. So she was cruising around in the beaver pond. Let me contrast it to a greater scop, who you'll be more likely to see at this location out in the open salt water. Now he's a male. A male lesser scop would look the same except for the head, and a female greater scop would look the same except for the head. So the real differentiation is the head shape here. So notice that his forehead, his beak comes down and then whoop, almost like a right angle there. It's really an angle that's pretty acute there between his bill and his forehead, versus she has more of a smooth curvy swoop. And his head is highest more in the front here. He doesn't have the bump in the back. In fact, it starts here and then kind of smoothly goes down. So his head is highest in the front, in his forehead area. He's more commonly seen in saltwater, a greater scop, and here's a lesser scop. Now, sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference, and depending on the angle and the light, you have to say greater, lesser, because you can't really determine which one is which, and that's okay. Sometimes it's just really hard to tell. So think about where the bird is and concentrate on head shape. The beaver pond is also pretty good for hooded mergansers. Thin orange bill here, and this one is either an immature or a female. It's got the beginning of its hood. It's all brown though. The boys, of course, have the distinct white marking when they're mature. And you can often find hooded mergansers in that little pond. There's also great blue heron that like the habitat there. Belted kingfisher are very common. They are so much fun to try and get a picture of because, as you know, these belted kingfisher are on the move. This one actually sat down long enough for me to get a picture, which was great. But they're fun to watch them. They hover and then dive down and get a fish. So they're really fun to watch the behavior of the belted kingfisher. And recently at Elwha River Mouth, there's been at least 2 in that beaver pond pretty regularly. So you're walking out now toward the end of the beaver pond, and look a little bit to your right, and you have some nice willows here, shrubs coming in, grass. You don't have to go off the trail much. This is just looking off the trail to the right. Nice habitat. This is great for migrating birds coming through. There's been reports of Lapland longspurs, which I have not seen personally, but they've been reported. Tucked in around this corner, right into this little nook here, is a nice little pond. Comes off the river, so it's a little freshwater pond. Very good for marsh wren and other marsh birds in here. Worth stepping over and taking a careful look. Of course, anything that likes to be near water will be in the trees around the pond, and there might be some dabbling ducks in there too. So I hope you're starting to see the different habitats that can be found out on the end of the trail. As you walk along the trail, I did mention the white-throated sparrow, and I have found this to be just a great resource for some of our local sparrows as you walk along that little trail by the beaver pond. Here's a fox sparrow, number 1. Note the bicolor bill, the broken eye ring, chevrons on its breast, and it doesn't have a lot of streaking on the back. And these birds like to stay low in the vegetation, and they'll often be scratching on the ground to uncover different prey items. So fun, really fun to watch, fox sparrows. And they have been seen recently. We got one on the Wednesday morning bird walk that we just did at Railroad Bridge this Wednesday. So they are in the area. So if you go out to the Elwha River Mouth, be on the lookout. Another migrant who has just come in is number 2, the golden crowned sparrow. And notice the beak color. This is kind of important for these sparrows. It's more of a horn color to the beak. It's got a little indistinct modeling on the breast. The mature golden crowned sparrows will have a golden, kind of yellowish golden crown. And some of them, and especially when they're breeding, have a big, thick black eyebrow. This individual does not in its breeding plumage. But the bill is really important, that horn color, because there is a sparrow that is hard to differentiate sometimes, especially if they're juveniles, from golden crowned, and that's number 5, the white crowned. So white crowned has a little, much lighter pinkishy bill. And if you just look at the colors of the 2 bills, and you see a bird with stripes on its head, a sparrow, and plain, pretty much plain breast, it helps to differentiate the 2. Because sometimes, especially with juveniles, the white supercilium isn't as distinct, or the black eye line isn't as distinct. The juvenile white crowns can have brown lines, and then you're kind of which is which. So really the bill is a great little tip for ID. Let me go over here to number 3, which is one of my favorite sparrows, the white-throated sparrow. So remember to look for it over by that apple tree when you're on the trail at the Elwha River Mouth. It's one of the better spots I have found for finding this particular sparrow. This individual has the nice bright yellow lores that mark some white-throated sparrows, certainly the white throat. They also come in a little bit drabber, tannish coloration. They still have the white throat though, and once you're used to finding them, even if they're a little more dull in color, you can still pick them out pretty easily. So this is a fun bird to find. And of course, number 4 is our song sparrow. And these are just wonderful birds. Our song sparrows in the Pacific Northwest are dark in coloration. When I visited Arizona, it took me weeks to figure out what the orange sparrow was, because they're a different color in different parts of the country, and they're much lighter in the desert Southwest. But here they're pretty dark, and they're pretty vocal, and they are pretty territorial. So the bird will typically jump up and start telling you about how this is its bush, and it makes a nice opportunity to photograph it. So I really enjoy our wonderful song sparrows around the area. We already talked about the white-crowned sparrow, number 5. And number 6 is a savanna sparrow, very stripy. So really look for the stripy, the lighter bill, the feet are pretty light, and sometimes a strong yellow supercilium or eyebrow here, more of an eye ring, and this is the savanna sparrow. Frequent on the beach, especially right now. They seem to be coming through in pretty large numbers. The other bird that's pretty common along that walk is a dark-eyed junco. Most of you know it. I didn't have a photo handy, so I didn't show it, but that's also in the sparrow family. Warbling vireo is not uncommon in those trees around the trail. Buick's wren can often be heard and seen as well. The vireos, I believe, have left for the year at this point. They come in summer, but the Buick's wren are present. And then there's usually a couple of spotted towhee, bright red eye. There's usually cedar waxwings when they're around, and I believe they still are. We saw a few on the bird walk this week. Black-headed grosbeaks are around there too. They are getting a little more hard to find right now, but we had one at a bird feeder on Wednesday. And the red-winged blackbirds really like that marsh and the marsh grass, and they're pretty distinctive and easy to see too as you walk along the trail. Kestrels are around in that area and fairly easy to identify. Start looking as soon as you turn off onto Place Road, because there are some clear-cut areas where they're up there searching for their favorite prey, which is voles and small mammals in that clear-cut area. Number 2 is here, red-tailed hawk. You can see the patagial bands. This one's pretty easy. It's got a red tail. There are several other species of hawks. Someone saw a red-shouldered hawk recently. So keep a close look when you look at the hawks in that area to see if you pick up one that might be a little bit different. Number 3 is a northern harrier male who I've seen fly over several times when I'm walking on the trail. And number 4, there are bald eagles, many in the region there. It's not uncommon to see several flying over or sitting up in trees on branches, juveniles, adults. I did not have pictures, but it's not unusual to find merlin, peregrine falcon, and osprey in this location too. So along with the songbirds and the other passerines, you have the predators who are on the lookout for, a meal. And as you walk along and go to the little pond in the right season, in May, for example, this can really be a great spot for warblers. At the end of the program, I'm going to tell you one other warbler spot that's very nearby that I really like. But walking along the little trail, looking into the forest, listen as well as look for common yellowthroat, all the yellow rump, but particularly Audubons seem to be relatively common here in the spring. Yellow warblers will be around in the bushes. Wilson warblers and black-throated grays have all been reported coming through in their spring migration. Now, I have not seen warblers during their fall migration out there myself. So I'm not sure what the scoop is there, whether they tend to be there more in May and less in the fall. I guess we'll hear if other people have been having good luck with warblers. There is a palm warbler that's very interesting, which tends to come in the winter to several locations on the North Olympic Peninsula. Most commonly seen in Neah Bay, but sometimes also seen at the Elwha River Mouth. And this is the palm warbler in its basic plumage, and it has yellow undertail coverts, and it tends to pump its tail. That's a very distinctive feature of this bird. So it likes low brush. It's going to be out at the end probably of the walk, near water, low in brush, sallying over to the beach, going back into the brush, pumping its tail. So be on the lookout for, in the winter, palm warblers. Swallows in large numbers congregate in this area, and they are in the midst of their migration right now. Here's a tree swallow with a straight line coming across its face. They really like to sit up on the lines. These are mostly barns with forked tails, but violet greens are common. Trees, barns, occasional cliffs, rough-winged swallows can all be seen in this area. So it's a good spot for looking at swallows. When we get to the end of the little trail walk, there's a very interesting sign that explains basically this whole area. It's very interesting. The Elwha and Glines dams were initially built on the Elwha River to supply power to the growing town of Port Angeles. And when they no longer served a very good purpose for power, they were one of the areas that was targeted for dam removal and restoration. And this is the largest dam removal project in the world. It took many years to get this accomplished. So It was done in phases in spring of 2012 and fall of 2014, and was a multi-agency collaboration, including leadership from the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe. There's a very good website, the Coastal Watershed Institute. And if you go to their website, you can read the blogs of the history of the dam removal, pictures, and how it all occurred, the coalitions that were necessary to get this to happen. And it was a really wonderful story of environmental collaboration and restoration. And it's just happening now. So if you take a look at the sign, because it really is interesting, the nearshore ecosystem is federally designated critical habitat for several species, and it's a nursery ground for salmon, surf smelt, sand lance, and other small fish. The beach features, which have happened since all this sediment was held up behind the dams. So when it washed down, it brought all these nutrients to the near shore, and it created a whole new ecosystem here that had previously been washed away because the sediment wasn't coming downstream. So fish are spawning, more different wildlife is coming back, and we're in the midst of the restoration of the largest dam removal project in the world. So it's very, very interesting. Now there's driftwood that protects the beach that previously, when it was just, open, had eroded and wasn't there. And again, all of this habitat for different salmon, fish, birds is really in the midst of happening. So if you have some time, I would recommend checking out coastalwatershedinstitute.org. It's a nonprofit that has wonderful pictures and explanation of this whole process. So we're going to appreciate that this is really a tremendous ecologic victory that's in progress as we continue to walk out more toward the beach. So let me ask at this point, if there are any questions about the forest or the birds at the beaver dam, beaver pond, more the freshwater type birds that we've been seeing so far.
No questions as of this time.
Okay. So what we're really here to be overwhelmed with is the gulls. There are a lot of gulls. This is just a couple of weeks ago when most of the gulls hadn't even arrived yet. And you just stand on the shore, here's the river coming out, and there's gulls everywhere. Excuse me. They like to sit on logs. They like to float in the river. They like to fluff up and wash in the river. They like to sit on the surrounding dunes or bars of gravel. There's just a lot of gulls that like to come here. As the river continues, it opens out, and here's the open strait. And you also have a lot of birds that like to sit right here at the river mouth at the open strait. It does help to have a scope for looking at birds who are far out here. It's not really necessary for the gulls because they're pretty close in, but the birds out farther in the strait and over toward freshwater bay, it's easier to see more of them if you have a scope. So let's talk about the gulls. So mew gulls have just started arriving. They spend the winter with us. They're dainty, small gulls. Number one is a mew gull with a round head, a small bill, which is unmarked, no spots or rings or anything like that. In the winter, they get, kind of dusky colored on their heads. In the summer, they're more white. Black and white wingtips, small gull, probably grayish, yellowish legs. So pretty easy just on shape and size to identify as a mew gull. And we get a lot of them. They're very common. Number two is a ring-billed gull. So the first thing you'll notice is yellow eye. I'm sorry you can't see its feet. It's also got bright yellow feet. The bill has a ring, helps with identification. And notice it's not like a juvenile gull where the black goes all the way to the tip. It's a ring with regular bill color beyond it. So the ring, the yellow eye, the yellow feet, black and white wingtips, somewhat lighter color on its mantle and wings, and that's ring-billed gull. Some of them are staying over the winter here, but many of them tend to come in migrating along with the California gulls. Number 3 is my favorite. This is an Olympic gull, a big pink-legged gull. Big, broad, burly, Olympic gull. And Olympic is just a nickname we call them. We have a large population of glaucous-winged gulls to our north, and large population of western gulls to our south. And here in the Olympic, here in the Puget Sound, the Olympic area, the Strait, they interbreed. So they estimate that up to 50% of our gulls are hybrids of glaucous-winged and western. So if you were to see a pure glaucous wing, it would have a little bit lighter wing, and the wing tip would be the same color as the rest of the wing, kind of a light gray. And then you've got a glaucous wing. If you've got a pure western, and this one tends more toward the western, this particular individual, darker wing and even darker wing tip, it makes it western. So many of our big, burly, broad, pink-legged gulls are glaucous wing western hybrids. Occasionally you'll find some that look more glaucous wing and others that look more western, and that could be, but again, many of them are hybrid in this area. Number 4 is Heermann's gulls. These guys are really different. You can spot these. Pretty much dark grayish gull, distinctive difference in color from other gulls. Their chest is gray, their belly's gray. The immature juveniles are very dark brown. The bill is two-toned, orange. Near the face, reddish orange and dark at the tip. They breed in California and disperse up here to us for the early fall, and I just saw a large number of them as I drove out the strait yesterday. So they're still around, but they'll be going soon back down to California where they spend the winter before they begin breeding again in the spring. So they are migrants who are moving through our area and stay for a couple of months. Number 5 is a jaunty California gull, and take a look at the yellow legs. So yellow-legged, and one behind it is more of a younger gull with grayish legs. So either grayish or yellow legs, a black and red spot on the bill, smaller in size. It's not as big and burly as is our Olympic gull here in number 3. So this is California gull. They come through in large numbers in the summer after they breed in the prairie potholes area and in Utah. They stop here on their way down to California where they spend the winter. Behind it is probably a second cycle California. They are molting and they kind of look like a wreck when they arrive. Lots of new feathers coming in, old feathers that are worn. So you can also tell the younger California gulls by how they look when they arrive from their long migration. So yellow feet, gray feet, black and red on the bill, and California gull. So here's what a lot of people come to the mouth of the Elwha to see. And this is a photo that I took of Thayer's gulls, which are a subcategory of Iceland gulls right now. They've been moved around a bit in classification, but right now they're considered a subclass of Iceland gulls. So on eBird, if you take a look at the bar charts, you'll see Iceland, and that's where Thayer should go. And actually, someone went yesterday to mouth of the Elwha. I was looking at the eBird reports this morning and reported 28 Thayer's Iceland gulls are there. So they have arrived. according to this reporter, who is a pretty good birder. So how do we identify them? Their legs are more bubblegum red than other birds, and they're also kind of short. You know, other birds have like, okay, this is more the ankle area. They have long, other pink-legged gulls are longer here before you hit the gull. These guys have kind of a short tibial area, and they have very long primaries. Unfortunately, they're also molting, these fellows right now, or gals, so they're normally really long primaries are just starting to come in. So luckily, and this was pointed out to me by Bob Okelheide, thanks Bob, I have a juvenile back here which shows you how long these primaries really are in Icelandic thayers. They are long, swept. It gives the bird a very low, swept appearance. It's shorter than most of the other gulls because of the shorter leg, and it's got this swept appearance from the very long primaries. Also on this juvenile, you've got white tips on the primaries, which is very distinctive for juvenile thayers. The other features is that they have kind of a round head. Brings to mind more the little mew gull that we saw, kind of a roundish head. They get a fair amount of streaking and spotting on their head in the winter, and their bill is different. It's a greenish yellow color, fairly straight and small, with a little red spot. So this is a smaller, narrower bill than a lot of the other gulls. And again, you're mostly going to be comparing these to the big, burly Olympic gull, which, you know, is broader, taller, has a big, thick bill with a steep gonadal angle, and, you know, is just a bigger gull all around. So here's the identifying features to help you identify your thayers. The yellow-green straight bill, round head, deep pink legs, smudgy streaking on head and neck, long wing projection, and for juveniles, pale edges on the primaries here. So hopefully you'll be able to head out and catch some Thayer's Icelandic gulls. They really do come in substantial numbers to the Elwha River mouth in the winter. This is their main area in our region to see them easily. There was a gull that I had trouble. Oh, let me go back, sorry. These guys have somewhat darker eyes, but some of them have a little bit lighter iris. And so I actually had a little bit of confusion here. And Bob Bokelheide helped me because I'm thinking, okay, bubblegum pink legs, okay, smudgy, okay. Maybe this is an Icelandic Thayer's, but if you look closer, this is a piercing light eye, really distinctive light eye. And instead of that nice kind of round head, this bird has a very sloped forehead, which is very common in herring gulls. They are both pink-legged. The herring has a paler mantle. It also has streaking on the head and neck. It does not have that really swept back wing projection, though, that we saw on the Thayers. So let me go back, especially look at this guy, how long these wingtips are, the wing projection on the Thayers, and now look at the herring gull. It really is not the same feel to the wing projection on the herring gull. And again, the light eye, the downsloping forehead will help you differentiate these two. They are both out there in the winter, so you might see some herring gull at the mouth of the Elwha. So it helps to take pictures and think about the differentiation. Here's another gull I saw out there. This is a big, puffy, ivory gull. Everything about it was ivory. The wingtips. It's got some smudge on its face, but I think that's probably from munching on stuff in the mud. Big gull, ivory color. The bill is bicolor, so it's a pinkish color near the face and black at the tip. So bicolor bill, large ivory bird is a juvenile glaucous gull. Now remember, glaucous winged gull is common. That is a gull that has some grayish mantle and wing and a grayish wingtip. This is not that. This is all ivory. So we don't see as many of these, but the Elwha River Mouth is a good spot to see the glaucous gull. We have our harlequin ducks all around out in the open water there in the strait around the river mouth. It's not hard to identify the male, but the females, take a look, because scoters can sometimes, they're brown too, and they have white on their face, and differentiating a female harlequin from a female scoter can take a little bit of looking. The harlequins have this ear patch, a white ear patch, and their face tends to be whiter in front. And again, they have a duck bill versus the scoters. Here's surf scoters, big bills that come off the front of their face, very thick bills, very sturdy. They are, you know, diving, getting shellfish, crunching them, big, heavy bills, very strong, very colorful, and a little white spot on the back of their neck sometimes here, light eye. So this is surf scoters. They're very common out in that location. Here's a white-winged scoter, also common, a little less so, but you can still see them. Look at that, again, big, thick, powerful bill. It's dark though, except a little bit at the end where it gets orangey. It's got a little eye flash, and its name is based on the little white wing spots that it has, especially in flight. You're easy to see that it's a white wing scoter. And black scoters can also be seen in that area. These are all black except for this yellowish knob on the nose, which again, thick bill, but with a yellowish knob. And these are somewhat less frequent, but they do show up, particularly in the winter. So these are the three scoters off in the strait. You'll also probably be able to see long-tailed duck out there. They tend to be a little farther from shore, so a scope would be very helpful to see long-tailed duck directly out from the Elwha River mouth out into the strait. They come in a kind of dappled colors of taupe and black and white. Their tails, if you can see the tails, are really nice and dramatic, and they tend to be in small groups. And just wonderful birds to be able to get a look at out there. My favorite is the bufflehead. This was one of our rare winter sunny days, and the bufflehead are iridescent, iridescent green, iridescent purple, and you know, they dive, they're little diving ducks. When they come up, they overshoot a little bit and they kind of pop out of the water, and they're just really fun for me to watch. I can never feel discouraged if I am watching a bufflehead. I really enjoy these birds. They come in large flocks and they're just really fun to watch them swimming and foraging. They have, I think they just have a nice little attitude. So my favorite, bufflehead. Also, we have widgeon that come in large numbers. So American widgeon, look at the white horizontal mark here on the side at about halfway in the bird. Very helpful at distance for identifying it as an American widgeon. It really stands out. They've got, the males have the green head marking and the lighter crown, white behind, and then a darkish tail area. But from a distance, that little white stripe across. And these come in the winter, they're here now, in large numbers to spend the winter with us at the Elwha River mouth. There are not very many Eurasian widgeon for some reason there. So I'm not going to go over that detail here. We've covered it in other locations though, that they're seen more commonly, particularly Pitchip Pocket in Squim. Loons are very common. I've seen quite a few loons still out in their alternate plumage. They're gorgeous. And notice this little triangle here. This helps me with loons because not only the alternate loon has that little triangle, but it reminds me that your basic loon is going to have a little triangle on the neck here. The common loon in basic plumage. Big, big bill, pointed straight ahead, big loon, low in the water in alternate and basic. This is a Pacific loon that happened to be in alternate plumage still. And this gray-white back of the neck really stands out when you see this bird from a distance. And eventually it goes all gray and white and looks a lot like a common loon, but often has a chin strap that is a darker gray, and you can see it and it helps to identify it as a Pacific loon. Red-throated loons still have a little bit of red left that you can sometimes pick up right now out in the water as you see them. Their bills tend to be up-pointed a little bit, and this red gradually changes to gray and the darker gray, and they get a little bit more monocolor, and best to be identified really by their upturned bill, and their general shape is different than the other loons. And you'll see all of these in the water off the river mouth. In the beaver pond, pied-billed grebes, commonly they prefer freshwater. Out in the bay, a lot of horned grebes right now. Western grebes have come through in large numbers as well. Here's a redneck grebe. This is a late adolescent. This time of year, this neck is going grayer in color, not red. The markings on the face are going to gradually become less as the bird matures. But it's a grebe with a large pointed bill. And so again, outline is important for helping to differentiate the grebes out in the saltwater. Occasionally there are eared grebes, and they tend to be less frequent. This is one with a little upturned small bill, a lot puffier, and in breeding plumage, remember they get these big tufts around the eye, and you can see how the demarcation of their dark area comes down a little further on the face compared to the horned grebe. But sometimes they can be a little different, a little difficult to differentiate. And I have seen eared grebe right off of Freshwater Bay there in alternate plumage earlier in the year. So that was a treat. Too far out to get a picture though. And our pigeon guillemots, our wonderful pigeon guillemots who breed here. We have volunteers who monitor these birds in their breeding plumage. Notice this white wedge shaped marking. And of course, in breeding plumage, I wish you could see it better, bright red feet. As they move toward their basic plumage, they still have that white wedge on their back. Helps me to ID them because boy, what a difference in appearance between the alternate and the basic plumage. And here's a juvenile. Again, that white wedge helps because I'm thinking, all the different murres, murrelets, but this helps me with the shape. This is a pigeon guillemot. Rhinoceros auklets are out there in numbers. This is a breeding auklet. I learned that their little rhinoceros horn, actually reflects ultraviolet light. So to other auklets, this is a little beacon of bright light, and it's got its breeding whiskers. So although now they are less of these breeding identifiers, there's still a lot of these auklets out on the water. Common murre are coming by in large rafts and numbers. They come in lines, and they are behind them. It's not that unusual to see a slightly smaller, darker murre following along, and that's the father leading the murres that were hatched this year. They take a while before they can fly. They leave the nest and go into the water when they're still fairly young, and their fathers lead them toward fishing grounds. So you'll see some of that going by too. There are marbled murrelets, smaller, small bill, 2 white spots. See, it helps to know that the guillemots have 1. Common mergansers are around all year long. The males are easy to differentiate from the red-breasted. Females are a little harder, so it helps to know what season and to look at the finer points of the color under the long red bill when you're differentiating immatures and females of common from red-breasted merganser. I find that a little challenging. All 3 cormorants, double-crested, brants with the thicker neck, pelagics with the white flank spot are there as well. And the last slide I'm going to show is on Warbler Row, which is a place to visit if you're out there. As you came down the road and make a right onto Place Road, instead of making a right off 112, make a left onto Dan Kelly Road. And you go down till you see a sign, the Olympic Discovery Adventure Route horse trailer parking. You pass the Colville Trails and go to the next parking lot. It has a little kiosk. There's a yellow gate. You can just walk around it. There's a porta potty here. It's open to the public. So here we are coming down 112. And we made a right onto Place Road, but instead of that, we're making a left onto Dan Kelly Road. Go 0.7 miles, turn left at the Adventure Route horse trailer parking sign. Here's the Colville Trails sign, pass that and go to the second parking area. The little gate is right here. Walk around the gate, and then this walk along the power line there is great in the morning, in May, let's say, birdathon, for when the sun hits those trees and the warblers come out. So all the warblers I mentioned earlier, Wilson's yellow-rumped, black-throated gray, are pretty much, depends on the year, but sometimes they're just all around. And this is my favorite place to see McGillivray's warblers as well. They tend to really like those trees by the side of that little trail. And there can be, you can hear them first. They have a loud chip and pretty easy to get pictures of as well because they're not really hidden too much by the trees. So good place for McGillivray's. So I'm going to pause for questions here. This is the end of the program. I am going to say our next program is Edda's Hook in Port Angeles on Friday, October 30th. Sign up at olympicpeninsulaaudubon.org. This is one of the birds we're going to be talking about. It's another important bird area. I'll leave this bird to be talked about until the next program. And are there any questions or comments, please?
There was a question on the color of the legs of the Heerman's gull, if you might speak to that.
Let me go back and see, and I'll also look it up here. I know they're dark legs on the Heerman's gull. Does anybody else want to venture? Yeah, they look pretty dark, blackish legs.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
John, you're on the call, is that correct?
I don't know if John has sound though. He might
okay.
be able to chat. And I'm going to stop the screen sharing at this point. We are still recording. Are there any other comments or questions?
Nope.
Kathy, do I see you raising your hand? Can you type in your question under chat, please? I don't see a question coming through. Are there any other comments through chat of folks who regularly bird in this area? Birds you think are important to be on the lookout for that we may not have reviewed here?
I just looked up the color legs of the Heermans, Judy, and they are black.
Okay.
Black legs. And red bill with the black tip, of course. So.
Thank you.
Oh, that's right.
Can you hear my question?
Yes, I just unmuted you.
Okay.
Are there any beavers in Beaver Pond?
I think there probably are, because there are active slides where you can see where the beavers are sliding down the two sides of the trail. And they look fresh, you know, there's no grass growing there and they're actively sliding. So they leave that as evidence that they're present. I personally have never seen a beaver there. But the fact that the slides are open and fresh suggests that they're pretty active. I also don't know where they get their materials to add to their hutch. Their hutch is very large in the middle of the pond and a lot of branches, but I don't see fresh, you know, when they eat a tree, they make kind of a wedge that you can see fresh beaver tooth marks. I don't see that either. I just see the slides. So I don't know if anyone else has seen a beaver out there. It'd certainly be fun to see.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? It looks like John is waving his hand. John, we have a fair number. Oh, there you go. I'm trying to unmute John. John, it's not. There we go. John, you're live.
Okay, I'm sorry. I tried to use the chat function several times, and I guess I just really don't know how to use it. It didn't seem to work for me. You know, other birds that might look like a gull out there would be Jaegers, because there's so many gulls at that location. Jaegers often pop in there. I've seen parasitic Jaeger there. So that's another bird, might be mistaken for a gull. A lot of times you can see a flash in the primaries telling you it's a Jaeger or if it's chasing gulls.
So the Jaegers fly very fast, and I think you taught me, John, that they are kind of really zooming along at high speed, and some of them have a lighter chest and then a dark bird, so you can kind of see a black-white in some of them as they go by. So look for a fast, low-flying bird stealing food from gulls.
Right.
Well, thank you all for being such great participants. We've had a good program. So far, there haven't been any technical issues. I'm grateful. And I hope to see you all next month at the Edis-Hook program. So have a good day, and thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful, Judy.
Thank you.